Okay, so this is the beginning of part 4 of this video with this Chinese Jaguar. And today's going to be wiring day. And I am mailing off the template to WD Music to create the new pickguard. So just to show you what I'm going to do today, here is the old plate. It's all plastic. And here's the wiring in the back. See if I can focus this thing. There you go. And so what I'm going to do is I have a new plate right here. This is metal, not plastic. And this is an actual replacement for a Jaguar. And so I'm going to put new switches in. I have some Switchcraft switches and some switches from All Parts. And I'm going to rewire this and put it back together so which is better quality parts. And just to show you here what this is, the All Parts. You can see here this is a red switch. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the red switch in where that is a toggle, either to turn the guitar on, turn the guitar off, or to switch it into phase mode, which is what I believe the top part of the circuitry does. And I'll show you that in a second. So what we'll have here is a red switch, because that's the kill switch, on off, black switch, black switch. This will be the neck pickup, this will be the bridge pickup on the bottom part of the circuitry. And on the top part, I put the switches in just to make sure they fit properly with the screws, and they do. So you can see back here, and you can see I copper foiled the back of these plates also, and I'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to rewire all this. Now when I rewire it, I'm going to take these switches out. I'm not going to use a soldering gun while these are attached to a plastic pickguard, because what will happen is it will damage, the heat will damage or blemish the top part of this plate. And let me just show you how that already happened. I was playing around with this, and you see that little blemish right there? That was from the soldering gun being used on the back side here, where I was trying to solder the negative lead, the ground, to the side of the switch. And I never actually touched the plastic piece, but the heat itself started to deform the surface of the plate. So when you do this, for this I didn't care, because I was already, I had already decided to put a new plate on, a real plate. But when you do this work, or if you do this work, make sure that you take the switches out, solder, and then screw them in, right, so you don't damage any of the plates, especially if they're plastic. Okay. You can also see that I finished up the copper foil, and notice here that the copper foil is here. It attaches. Each one of the cavities is attached with copper foil. Let me take this off here and here. So when I get the pickguard, I'm going to have to copper foil the underside, as I did with these plates here. And the reason why you're doing that is because you are creating a Faraday cage. That's basically it. It's an enclosed cage to keep interference out. And so if you don't copper foil the back sides of the plates or the pickguards, then the Faraday cage, the circuitry, is not complete. So that's why it looks that way. And all of this stuff that you see here, this is all going to be hidden under the pickguard. And as I mentioned before, the pickguard, the template, is being mailed off to WD Music today. The turnaround time is around 2 weeks from the time they receive it, which will be a couple of days. They're down in Florida. I'm in North Carolina. And yeah, 2 weeks from receipt. So the guitar is going to look very nice when it's done. Alright, so the other thing I did was I put a new bone self-lubricating graphite nut on the guitar. That took a little sanding and shaving to make it fit properly, but it's in there, and that's a big enhancement over the almost the toy-like plastic nut that was there. It was, I mean, things are plastic, and then things are plastic. That was a plastic nut. Okay, so I'm going to do the wiring now, And all I'm going to do, I'm not going to film this, is I'm going to replicate what's already been wired. That's all I'm going to do. The tricky part is up here because the switches are still backwards. This should be the neck. This should be the bridge. They had it switched around as they did down here. I mentioned that in my previous video. And so I've got to pay close attention to replicating where to solder so that I don't hose it up. I did write it down too, so I have a schematic that I created just in case. Okay, so that's another tip. You're going to do some wiring and you're really not sure about the wiring, you're not an expert in it, do a little schematic for yourself. So this way you have a reference point just in case what you did is a mistake and you don't realize it, but you do realize it when you realize that the guitar is not working properly. Okay, so I'll be back in a little bit, and I will show you the all of the new rewiring. And then the next piece of this will be when the pickguard comes in, the installation of that, and the guitar will be done. All right, you guys, see you soon. Okay, so it's a few days after my last segment, and all of the wiring has been redone. And let me just show you here. The piece right here, the switch plate, this is a metal switch plate. The one that came with the guitar was plastic and it had that chrome look to it, just like these plates here. So I went with a real plate, and you can see that I cleaned up the wiring considerably. And not that the wiring was bad the way it was just really cheap components, and I wasn't happy with some of the soldering. You'll notice here too that I have some of the wires twisted and capped off. This is liquid tape that I use. It's great stuff. And the reason why I do that is because these are ground wires, and I don't want to solder 3 or 4 grounds to one switch. So what I do is I group them, and then I have one lead coming out, and that's the one ground that I will solder to a switch. So that's why you see that there. Okay, this is for the neck pickup. This is for the bridge pickup, and this goes to the front plate here. Now the front plate, interesting. I had to actually get my wood chisel and chisel out the cavity some more here, and also down here. And you might ask why. Well, because when you copper foil a guitar, if any of the contact points on your switches touches that copper foil, the guitar is going to go dead. There's going to be no current going through it. And that's because what's happening is the copper foil is shorting out the circuitry. So this cavity here was not cut properly. I mean, it's a real hack job. This and the bottom one also. You can see down there. The whole bottom part is unnecessary. It should never have been bored out. So what was happening was, before I actually chisel these little pieces out here and here, I would lay the switches down on the plate, and if I shifted it a little bit, the guitar was going on and off. So I knew exactly what the problem was. I had a situation like this too with a knockoff Rickenbacker. So what you'll see that I did, let me see if I can get close up here. You see the black on the contacts? Let's see if I can get a better view for you. Hopefully this gets in focus. That's liquid tape. And I put the liquid tape on the contacts so that in the event that when I shift this around to make it fit correctly, it bumps up against the cavity wall with the copper foil, it won't short out. All right, it's like using electrical tape, same thing. These switches here, best I can tell, I still don't know if it's a phasing because I have to have the strings on the guitar to really tell. But right now, what it will do is, if the switches are in the forward position, they are off. So this is the neck position here. So if I go down here, down is on, and you can see what I did for the master switches. I converted them to red versus black. So down is on, and we'll just push the bridge up for now in the off position. So on, that's a kill switch, guitar is on, neck pickup is on, bridge pickup is off. Up here, bridge pickup circuitry because the switch is up, which is the neck pickup circuitry. When it's down, it'll be the bridge circuitry. So right now it's up, neck, neck is down. When these are forward, what you're going to get is just a regular single coil sound. You're going to get some hum because that's what single coil pickups do. From what I've been able to gather from working this, when the switches go into the back position, you're going to kill the 60 cycle hum. Think of it as like having a 5-way switch on a Telecaster or a Stratocaster. When you have the switch in the number 2 position or the number 4 position, it cancels out the hum. And this is what this is doing. Now, I don't know whether it's doing that by design because I use the same wiring that came out of China, but that's what it's doing. When I put the strings on it, I'll be able to tell some more about any other type of effect like phasing. But right now, because there's no strings, it's very difficult to do with headphones. You just don't know. That's it. So the copper foiling is done. You can see here I even put a little memo to myself. Back, it's B-A-C-K, on, back on, no hum. Now the pickguard is on order, and WD Music should have it by tomorrow or Saturday. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it'll take about 2 weeks for them to turn it around. This is the old pickguard, and you could just take a look at, the way it's cut. That hole here, because that's where the ground was running and it was being slipped in under the bridge. That's sloppy work right there. So this is going to get trashed when the new one comes in. And I also rerouted, I should say, the ground. So the ground was coming from here and coming out here. And then it was sitting under the bridge. What I've done is I've drilled a hole here and drilled a hole here. I'll put a video in the description box. It's a very good video by the guitarologist, and he shows you how to do this. So I don't have to show you. I'll let him show you. And I rerouted the ground. So this way what will happen is the ground will actually go where it's supposed to go, which is to a tailpiece. Not to a bridge, to a tailpiece. And what I'll do is I will drop this into one of the holes, and when I screw down the tailpiece and I put it back on, the guitar will be grounded. Okay, so the pickups are these Dragonfires, and you can get them on eBay. 20 bucks a piece, black dual rails. They are hot. I think they're 15,000 ohms each, so it doesn't matter whether you put it in the neck or the bridge position because it's the same pickup and they are designed to work either with the neck or with the bridge. So the guitar is going to be very, very hot. These pickups are going to look excellent against the new pickguard, which is going to be a white pearloid. This stays, well, that didn't stay, this is new, and this stays. And when the new pickguard comes in, I'll put the pickups in and put the tailpiece back on and string her up, and we should be ready to go. It's going to be a vast improvement. I'm expecting the guitar to be a lot quieter. Okay, so that's this update. There's really nothing else to do until the pickguard comes in, and when it does, these get installed, wired up, installed to the pickguard. Pickguard gets fastened. We'll polish her up. Again, I'll position the bridge properly. It wasn't positioned properly. When I first got the guitar, it was way too much at an angle, so we're going to get at the 25.5 inch mark, and then we will put the tailpiece and the whammy bar back on the guitar, and she'll be done. Okay, that's it. Catch you guys in about 2 weeks, and have a great day. Hey friends, it's Mike. Today is part 4 of the Chinese Jaguar, and I'm going to complete the repairs and the upgrades and the fixing up of this guitar with this segment. So the reason why it took so long is I had to wait for the new pickguard to come in. That's the new pickguard from WD Music. It fits perfectly. I had to do a little bit of filing here on this top piece to make it a little more flush, but it was very minor. And you can see a big difference between this pick guard and the one that shipped with the guitar. Okay, so we have a really nice pick guard to work with. I already wired up the pickups. We have a California G or a Cali G. This is a single coil, but it's the quiet single coil, noiseless. And then we have a dual bar humbucker in the back. I believe this is either a Donless or it might be a Fire Dragon. I have to check, I forgot. It's been a long time. It was 3 weeks from the time I ordered the pick guard to the time I actually received it. It was a long time, but it's going to be well worth it. The other thing I'm going to do is, and I'll show you this as I do it, I'm going to put a Jaguar bridge on the guitar. The bridge that came with the guitar was a Rickenbacker knockoff. And the reason why they used the Rickenbacker is because it has the cover that goes over the bridge. What I did was I bought a regular Jaguar bridge and the cover to give it that retro look. I'll show you that when I get to it. No need to kind of figure it out now. When you see it, you'll understand it. The only thing is I'm going to have to measure and drill holes to put that bridge in. The way the Rickenbacker bridges work, they sit on top of the guitar. There are 2 small screws that go into the guitar to kind of hold the base plate in place, and then the bridge itself sits on top of that base plate. So there's no actual deep holes or posts going into the guitar. So we're going to have to do that. Put the post holes in the guitar in order to install the Jaguar bridge. And I will do that. Some of the other things that I did do already, I reoriented this plate. I don't know if you remember, if I get the light out of the way. When I had the guitar, when I first got it, the high E string was rubbing up against the post here for the vibrato arm. And in order to fix that, I had to fill the holes with Titebond and some toothpicks, let it cure, and then just shift the plate over just a little bit. And I did that already. I also reran the ground wire, which was running out of the guitar. It's actually coming from this cavity here underneath, and it was attaching to the bridge. What I did was I reran and routed a hole from here to here, and now the ground wire is connected to this screw right here. That's where it really should be. Okay, new knobs. These are the actual retro knobs that you would find on an old Jaguar, and I think we're good. I will have to put some copper foil on the back of this pick guard in order to complete the Faraday cage effect. So whenever you put copper foil in, you can see that's why it's overlapped here. It's overlapped so that when I put the copper foil on the reverse side, and then when we put the pick guard on, boom, it closes the circuitry. All right, so I'm going to do that now. I'll show you what that looks like in case you haven't done that before and you're confused about what I'm talking about. So let me do the copper foil and I'll be back. All right, so there you go. That's all you need to do. And that'll be the top of the Faraday cage. And we should be all set. Okay, and I cut out the pickup holes there with an X-Acto knife. There it is right there. And I'll start to put the pick guard on now, and then we'll get into measuring where to put the bridge. All right, so I'll be back. Okay, so the pick guard is on. Everything is screwed in, and she's looking great. Looking very, very nice. The seams between the chrome-like pieces here for the volume and the volume and the tone, very tight. Looks excellent. The same thing here. It looks very, very good. Let me see if I can get that light out of the way. It's so annoying. But you can see that's looking very good too. The only slight thing here is right here, but that's not a big deal. Actually, if you look at a lot of the Fenders and the Squiers themselves, you're going to see little anomalies like that. I've taken a close look. So this is looking very, very good. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start measuring out to put the bridge in. And then once I have that bridge in, then we can string her up, set her up, and she'll be ready to go. She should be very quiet because this is a noiseless single coil and this is a humbucker, plus we have the hole inside of the cavities copper foiled. So we should be in very, very good shape. All right, so I'll be back in a little bit. Let me start doing some of the measuring and then I'll explain what I did. Okay, so I'm doing the measurements now to get the Jaguar bridge on the guitar. So the first thing I did is I put on 2 strings, the low E and the high E. And this is so I can get myself a straight line going back to the tailpiece. So that's number 1. You have to do some geometry here. The second thing is I started the tape measure here at the beginning of the nut, the very front of the nut, and I measured 25.5 inches. And there's 25.5 right there. And you can see I put a piece of blue tape there. Now what's going to happen is that blue tape is going to allow me to ensure that when I put the bridge on, when I drill the posts into the guitar, that the posts are aligned correctly. And straight across is fine. 25.5 is the distance from the nut to the center of where the posts are. Excuse me, right here. I'm pointing to the 26. 25.5 right here. On a Gibson or a Les Paul style guitar, that number is 24.75. So that would be up over here. Okay, but this is a 25.5 inch neck. So right here. All right, now what I'm going to do is, believe it or not, this tune-o-matic, the holes in this tune-o-matic line up almost exactly with the posts for the Jaguar. So I'm going to use this as my template. And here's the Jaguar bridge right here. So hold on one second, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see the tune-o-matic is on the bottom and the Jaguar bridge is on the top. And you can see the posts, which are part of the Jaguar bridge, are fitting into the holes of the tune-o-matic. This is good because what it's going to allow me to do is to be able to lay the tune-o-matic down, position it correctly, make sure I have it aligned properly, and then I can take a marker and stick it in each one of these holes and put a marker dot here and a marker dot here, or about here and there, and that's going to tell me where I need to drill so that I can drill the holes for the posts. All right, so let me line it up and then I'll come back and I'll show you again exactly what I did. So I boxed it off a little bit more to make sure that I have the geometry correctly. The way I did that was I took this ruler here and I put it on the outside of the screws, and then I laid a piece of tape right up against the ruler. And I did the same thing on this side here. Okay, so what that allows me to do, this is the Jaguar bridge, this is the tune-o-matic, is to take a look at where I'm at. Now, if you look down the holes, you can see the blue tape is running right down the center of the hole. That's where the drill bit's got to go. And also here too. Now, the tune-o-matic posts are not an exact match for the holes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this dot here first, in here, and then I will take the tune-o-matic and line the bottom of this post up with that dot, and then take a look at where it lands over here. It's going to be very close to the center here, but it's not exact. And once I take a look at that, I'll note it, take my little marker, and make another dot, and then I'll start the drilling. You'll also notice that with a tune-o-matic, this is the bridge, type of bridge that was on the guitar that came with it. It was a Rickenbacker knockoff bridge, but it's really a tune-o-matic. It has the same width and dimensions. You can see what happens here. The the low E is okay. It's going over the pickup correctly here, over the pole. But look at here. It's too far off the neck. And you see where it is? Well, that's going to get fixed by the sheer fact that the correct bridge, the Jaguar bridge, you can see that it does not match up the saddles exactly with a Tune-o-matic. See where the last saddle is here? Right here. And then take a look at the Tune-o-matic. Okay? This is good, but it's just spread out a little wider. Once we get this bridge on, this problem where the string is not sitting where it's supposed to be over this pole piece on the front pickup and being this far off the neck is going to go away. It's going to move over. Okay, so I'm going to start the work now to mark it off, and I'll be back. Okay, so we're going to take the plunge. Take a look at the drill bit here. See the point? It has a point. And this is what you should use, unless you use a punch, to start the hole. What you don't want to have happen is the drill bit to slide around on you. So these types of drill bits are great. You're going to push it in to the wood, or in this case, we're going to start with the pick guard, and it's going to go into the wood, and we're going to be able to drill that way and ensure that we're not sliding around. And then we'll move to a bigger bit. Start small and work larger. Do not start large because you can't get smaller. So if you cut or drill a hole, I should say, too large, then the anchor is going to float around on you, and then you're going to have to, fill it and all that stuff. So to avoid all that work, just start small and then work your way to a larger, wider hole. All right? The other thing too is I recommend that you keep the guitar flat. All right? So if you have it on the stand, what'll happen is the guitar is going to be at an angle, and when you drill, what'll happen is you will wind up, in many cases, drilling a hole at an angle. And because it's perception, it's when you're working on it, that's how you're seeing it. So leave it flat, and you should be in good shape. That ensures that you're drilling straight down and not at an angle. All right, so I'm going to take the plunge now. Hopefully I get this right, otherwise I'm going to be an unhappy guy. All right, be back. Okay, so the initial holes have been drilled. Let me see if I can. So these are the posts that go into the post anchors. This is what's attached to the bridge, and you can see here and here, it's a perfect fit. So now what I have to do is, sorry about the blurry there, it just cleared up. I'm going to take a larger drill bit so that I can get the actual anchors into the hole, and then we're done with the bridge. Okay, so when you do this, just take your time. Measure twice, 3 times, 4 times. Make sure you get it right. The most important thing is to make sure if you're working on a Fender or Strat, Telecaster, Jaguar type of guitar, that the center of the saddle sit at 25.5 inches. Okay? And that's why you have saddles. That's why they go back and forth. To intonate, you might have to go a little shorter than 25.5, or a little longer than 25.5 inches. That's what the saddles do. They move off that center mark of 25.5 inches. All right, so let me get the holes bigger now, and then we'll put the posts in, the anchors, and we'll get the bridge set up, and we should be in good shape. All right, so the bridge is in, and I have it adjusted up, and it's in there nice, but we still have a little bit of a problem with the low E being too close to the edge of the fretboard of the neck, and the high E being too far. So if we take a look down, we could see that the high E, right, see the distance here in the first fret, and here on the low E, the first fret, and then as we make our way down the neck, you can see where this is shifted over some and this is shifted over some. And I know the bridge is in the right position. So what that means is the neck wasn't installed absolutely straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the neck off, and I'm going to have to stick a shim. Let me see if I can turn around here so you can see this. I'll show it to you when I do it, but I'm going to have to stick a shim in here, right in between the neck and the body, so that it moves it over just a little bit. So what kind of shim would you use? I usually use just a small washer, and that does the trick. All you need is something that will give you that little extra push over to one side or the other. In this case, we got to move the neck over to the left. All right, so you can start to see how these Chinese guitars, they may not be worth the money. This one, to be honest with you, what I've put into it so far, pickups, the pick guard was expensive. This wouldn't be worth it if you were just looking for a Jaguar style guitar. I don't mind doing this stuff because I like the challenge. I like fixing this stuff up, and at the end of the day when I'm done, I have a very unique guitar, right? Something that nobody else has. So let me unscrew the neck. Thank God it's a bolt-on, because if this were a glued-in neck, you'd be screwed. And let me see what I could do as far as shimming it and adjusting the neck a little bit. Be back. Okay, so I took the screws out, and I have a clamp there so that the guitar doesn't fall all over the place, so I can work with it. And I decided that I'm not going to be able to shim here because I don't have enough room. Look to the left of the blue tape. I don't think I have enough room. So I'm going to have to shim the other side up here. It'll have the same effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a small washer in here and then push it back together again and put the screws back in. And what's going to happen is that's going to force the neck to have an offset, so to align it properly. And that should do it. Okay? I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes with these cheap guitars, if you don't get a straight neck, this is what you wind up having to do, unless you want to plug the holes and all that and start from scratch. This is a quick and dirty way to do it, and it does work. So let me put that washer. I'm going to slip it in here. I'm going to tighten it back up, and let's see what happens. Okay, so that did the trick. And you can see now that the strings are aligned properly, pretty much even off the sides of the neck, over the pickups. There we go. So there's a slight gap there now, you see? And what I used was a carbon fiber washer. They're very, very thin, they're strong, and it's not going to go anyplace. So, you know, the gap, you know, would you want something like that typically? No, but what are you going to do? I mean, this is what it's come down to. This is the way it was going to be fixed. You have a little bit of a little unevenness right here, but generally speaking, this is good. Right? You're not going to stare at that. If you stare at that, then you have a big-time OCD, which I may have sometimes, but I promise not to stare at it. But what it does do, it gets the guitar aligned properly. So that's really, at the end of the day, what I'm happy about. Okay, so let me put the rest of the strings on, set her up. I'm also going to polish her up with some Jaguars to really get that gold metallic to pop, and she'll be done. Okay, so she's done, and she came out looking very, very nice. She's playing great, stays in tune, the pickups sound awesome. What I'm going to do is, in the future, is to do a video with a sound check. We'll play her clean, and then with some distortion, and you'll be able to hear that she sounds pretty damn good. Very quiet. As you know from watching the other segments, I did the copper foiling in the pickup cavities and in the wiring cavities, and that paid off in spades. The guitar is very, very quiet. This is a noiseless California Guitars, or Cali G, single coil, and this is a Fire Dragon dual rail humbucker. and the rails are black. That's why it's hard to see, but two great sounding pickups, especially for the money. We have a Jaguar bridge, which I got from All Parts. This is a fender cover to give it that retro look, and you do have to crimp the sides of the cover in order for it to snap on and stay in place. If you don't crimp, what will happen is as soon as you pick the guitar up, the cover will fall off. So just crimp the sides here, and you're in business. One of the problems I had with the guitar was this tailpiece plate was oriented too much to the right, so I had to move it a little bit, and I did that, and you can see here, hopefully you can see that, I have clearance on this side, and this side, the high E and the B, so there's no string rubbing against the post. When I first got the guitar, the string was right up against the post, and whenever you use the bar, you would hear the scratching. So that's completely fixed. The alignment of the strings going over the pickups is spot on now, as you can see. The pickguard is beautiful. It's a pearloid white, and I bought it from WD Music. It is custom made. This particular pickguard, it was a lot of money. It was 75 bucks to have this pickguard cut, but it makes a big difference in how the guitar looks, and it tightened everything up because when I submitted my template, I made sure that all of the seams were cut properly so that the chrome pieces of this Jaguar sat up nicely against the pickguard. In the original pickguard, which I threw out, that wasn't the case. There were some gaps, and it was cut sloppily, and it just wasn't very good. But now she's looking great. Switch plate from All Parts. The one that came with the guitar was plastic like this here with a chrome look. This is a real metal chrome switch plate. All the switches were swapped out, and I put red switches in for the master control switches here and here. And she plays real well. She really does. So she came out great. The one thing I do want to call out on this guitar is if you want to adjust the truss rod, let me see if I can get in there and show you. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Let me get the bar out of the way. Maybe. See right here? It's like on an acoustic. That's where the truss rod bolt is, or the screw is. And so it gets a little tricky because you wind up having to adjust the truss rod. You have to do it without the pickguard on. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to slip your Allen wrench into the hole here to make the adjustment. So I did all that. I have just a little bit of adjustment, neck relief in the guitar. Very little. There's no buzzing. There's no fretting out. That's because when I was waiting for the pickguard, which took 3 weeks, I did all the frets, and I leveled all of them. And plays great. I did have to, if you watch the other segments, I did have to shim the neck a little bit right here. So I have a very thin washer in between the neck and the body. And then I tightened the neck back up because it's a bolt-on neck, obviously. And the reason why I had to do that was because when the guitar shipped from the factory, it wasn't installed straight and aligned so that the strings would find their way over the pickup poles. And it also led to a situation where I had, I think it was too much gap between the low E and the side of the fretboard and too little on the high E. So in order to fix that, I had to shift the neck just ever so slightly. It was very slight, and it worked. Now, some people are going to comment or write to me and say, you know, Mike, this was a lot of work for a guitar that you could just go out and buy a Squire Jaguar and be done with it. For the amount of money you put into this, you could have actually bought a really high-end Squire Jaguar. And I realize that. I realize that with every single guitar that I work on, that if I wanted to, I can just go out and buy a brand new guitar or something used and be done with it and not have to do the work. But the thing is, I like to do the work. That's why I do this. So I like taking guitars, which most people would just pass up on, and seeing what I can do with them. And so from my perspective, for 200 bucks, this was a good guitar to use as a project guitar. All the basics are there. It's got a neck, it's fretted, and all that stuff. And realizing when I bought it that it was going to need some work. Any guitar that you buy from China, especially off of Aliexpress, is going to require some level of work. Now, I've had two exceptions, and those were the two Jimmy Page Les Pauls that I did videos on, but even with those, I had to level some frets. So with these Chinese guitars, at the very least, you're going to have to do some fret work, at the very least. And if you know how to do fret work, which is not hard, then it's not a big deal. But if you don't know how to do fret work, or you're afraid to do it, and you want to send it off to a repair shop or a luthier, then it's going to become an expensive proposition. So you're not going to want to do that. So one of the points I want to drive home with these Chinese guitars is that they are not worth it to many people. For me, I like them because I can fix them and do things with them, and at the end of the day, when I'm done, I have a very unique guitar. Nobody else is going to be walking around with a guitar that looks like this. That's my point. So you have to be careful when you buy them. I just received a comment on one of my Jimmy Page Les Paul videos, and the guy was saying that these Chinese guitars are not worth it. The wood is cheap and all this and yada yada. Well, of course. And it's not going to sound like a guitar that you're going to spend hundreds of dollars on or thousands of dollars on. In fact, I did a video which showed my Les Paul Standard T versus one of the Les Paul Chinese guitars I have. I think it was it was the Jimmy Page that I showed. So I compared the two. And I clearly called out that the fit and finish on the Gibson was light years ahead of the Chinese Les Paul, the Gibson. But not everybody has $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to go spend on a Les Paul, on a Gibson Les Paul. And at the end of the day, many guys that are playing Les Pauls or electric guitars, they're not playing with a lot of finesse. There are those that are, yes, and the wood matters, and the resonance and the sustain and all that stuff is something that they're very particular about, and I completely get that. But for the average guy that's playing guitar or gal, they get it plugged into an amp. They've got it going through an overdrive pedal or a distortion pedal. It's going through a compression pedal. So the point I'm trying to make is all this finesse that people want to talk about with the wood and the tonal quality and all that stuff goes right out the window when you've got your distortion pedal turned up and you got the amp cranked to 8. So again, these guitars are really, for me, they're novelty. They are a chance for me to be able to pick up guitars, different looking guitars, different styles, and put them into my collection. And I do play them. And when I have friends and family come over, they love to look at them. Yeah, they don't care whether it's a Chinese Les Paul or a Gibson Les Paul. They like the way the guitars look. And this one sounds and plays very, very good. Okay, no complaints. Yes, it cost a couple of bucks to put it together, but you know what? It looks great. And again, I love the way it sounds and I love the way it plays. Okay, so that's basically it. She stays in tune wonderfully too. I have no problems with her going in and out of tune. She stays spot on, so good deal. Okay, so that's it. The Chinese Jaguar is done. And if you guys have any comments and questions, leave them below. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.